Okay, so to continue on our conversation this week, I want us to highlight some common pricing strategies that sport organizations use when pricing tickets. The first of which is penetration pricing. As you can see here in the definition, penetration pricing is when you keep prices consistently low in order to sell a greater amount or quantity. This approach or strategy to pricing tickets tends to be good for products that have an elastic demand. And we identified that in the last video, right? This concept that certain products, if you change the price on them or you increase the price too much, then there's going to be a pretty big change in demand, right? Meaning fewer people are going to buy the product. So products that tend to have an elastic demand do well under penetration pricing. In my mind, minor league sports is a great example of a system that's been using penetration pricing for a long time, right? You go to a minor league game like the Corn Belters, which many of you do, and you know prices are going to be low, right? You expect to pay, somewhere around $10 to get into a game, and you know that you can expect that price point every time you go, right? If the Corn Belters increased prices and started charging you $50 to come in, you're probably not going to go as often, right? Even if the dollar dogs are really good. That price point is probably going to change your desire to attend that game. So, sports teams that are operating at a level like the Corn Belters or other minor league teams, penetration pricing tends to work well. Premium pricing is another strategy here. This is also a pricing strategy known as prestige pricing. So the idea here is that you're charging high prices that are consistent with the brand image of luxury or high quality. So obviously there are a number of consumer-based products that use premium pricing. Think of any kind of luxury car brand, right? They're using premium pricing that's consistent with a brand image they've established over time. From a sport ticket perspective, I often think of the Masters as a great example of a sport organization using prestige pricing. Obviously, the Masters is a once-a-year tournament at Augusta. It tends to be a pretty exclusive event, meaning it's difficult to get tickets to because a lot of people want to attend. And Augusta, in general, has sort of established this reputation or brand as being this premier golf course. So because of that, they are using this premium pricing strategy with their product, in this case passes to come to the Masters. You can see here by using this pricing strategy, they're able to charge a pretty high or steep price point for those wanting to attend their events. Okay, customary pricing is another pricing strategy that's commonly used. So here we're talking about price is fixed at a particular point for a long period of time. Think of organizations that you can align with a certain price point. I always think of like Subway and $5 footlong. Different fitness centers that have $10 a month as their price point. The idea here is that you want to fix the price point so that it's memorable to people. It's not always an effective ticket pricing strategy, right? Because it sort of limits whether or not you can increase that price over time, and sort of people getting stuck on a price point means they're not going to want it to change. So it's not necessarily a great ticket pricing strategy, but could be useful for other sorts of sport products. Product line pricing is another common pricing strategy for sport products. So here we're talking about a systematic range of prices for different levels or groups of products. So this is sort of your standard season ticket pricing strategy, right? So looking at a menu of ticket options for season ticket holder plans, and you can see the different levels of options based on where you might sit in the stadium or the arena. So product line pricing is what sport organizations are utilizing when they create that menu of options for season ticket holders. Bundle pricing is when you have multiple products included into one package or priced as one unit. I often think of like the family night bundle pack for a lot of sports teams, where they'll include 4 tickets, 4 hot dogs, and 4 drinks, and maybe that's all $250 for the whole family. Obviously, there are other examples of bundle pricing. Ski resorts tend to use bundle pricing, right, where they might include, the skiing itself, and they might bundle it with a hotel stay or resort stay. Bundle pricing is pretty common across the sport and leisure industries, but it can be a really effective way of pricing something so that people that aren't interested in that additional secondary spending once they get to the sporting event don't have to worry about that, right? Everything is bundled nicely into one little package. Okay, so those are some common pricing strategies that sport organizations use. I do want us to spend a minute here talking about this concept of discount pricing because it's something that's been used by sport organizations since the beginning of the commercialization of sports itself. So I think it's an interesting concept and one that we should think about and also maybe rethink a little bit, especially in today's market. So this concept of discount pricing is basically what you would think, marking down prices of the product, and the goal is ultimately to increase customer traffic in a short term, right? So, having a ticket price that's maybe $50 and then discounting it to $30 in order to get more people to come to the game, right? A common practice, we see it used often by sport organizations, especially in instances where they might be struggling to bring fans in, maybe the team's not doing so well. There are a number of factors impacting their decision to discount that product. Well, what might be wrong with discount pricing, or what might be some issues surrounding discount pricing? There are a couple of things that practitioners should consider. One is that by discounting pricing too often, you run into this risk of potentially alienating people that have paid full price, right? I know when I worked for the Blues and I would handle a lot of our customer service issues, one of the biggest complaints I got was from full season ticket holders who had purchased tickets at full price at the beginning of the season, calling to complain later in the season when we were releasing discounted tickets for single game purchase later in the season. And you can understand why that would be frustrating to folks, right, that had paid full price. So that's a potential concern with discount pricing. Another is that, if you continue to discount a product long enough, it can become permanent in a customer's eyes or perspective, right? So if a customer gets used to paying a certain price point and they do so several times in a row, and then you go back to the original pricing, they may be less willing to pay that new price, right, or that former price, because they've gotten used to it at the discounted level. And we can probably all relate to that. You feel like you're getting a good deal, and then all of a sudden you're not again. So, constant discounting can run into that issue. And then finally, if you're heavily discounting your products throughout the year, this can kind of lead to a negative connotation for your brand, right? Some consumers might start to devalue the product in their own mind, right? Well, if this product keeps getting discounted, maybe it's not worth coming to the games. Or if they're struggling this badly to get people there, it must not be worth watching. So you have to be very careful about discounting too often. And with that, I do want to mention this concept of value-added pricing, because I think there is a way to rethink discount pricing, and this concept of value-added pricing might be that way. So with value-added pricing, instead of just discounting the price of a ticket, you add features or services to a product, and that would likely make customers willing to pay more for that product. Now, obviously, value-added pricing works best when you can add something that someone can't buy somewhere else, right? The competitor's not selling. But this concept of value-added pricing is a way for you to keep prices where they are, or potentially add to that price point, but you're still offering fans something additional. And in some cases that there may be costs associated with that. Well, in other cases, you might just be, providing a chance to meet players after the game. Something that won't necessarily cost the organization anything, but certainly adds value to the fan. So to me, this idea of value-added pricing is a way to be more creative with the products and the pricing strategy, rather than sort of going to that discount pricing initially, finding ways to add value to your current pricing is probably a more effective approach long term. Okay, so you might be thinking, why is it important that sales reps have a good understanding of pricing and pricing theory and pricing of packages and so on and so forth? And I always liken it to a waiter or a waitress or a bartender, right? For those of you that have worked as a server at a restaurant or a bar, you know that one of the first things they have you do is they send the menu home with you, right? And say, basically memorize this, get to know it front and backwards. And I view ticket sales in the same way, right? Just as it's important for a waitress to be able to explain the products that they're selling at a restaurant, the same is true for a sales rep, right? These are the people that are going to be communicating with your potential buyers, and they need to be educated not just on the price points that exist, that's important, but they also should understand sort of the decision making that's going on behind that, right? What value is there in these ticket packages so that they have the ability to sell the product to these potential buyers. Okay, so I think it's important as we start to talk about the different ticket packages that sport organizations make available, that we first sort of identify that the type of buyer that a sales rep is talking to is an important component of these conversations. And I think it's important to note that sometimes sales rep is talking to a potential consumer, or sometimes they're talking to a potential business partner. So this B2B versus B2B selling, B2B versus B2C selling. B2B is business to business selling, right? So sport organization is trying to sell a ticket package to a company that's looking to buy a ticket package and then use it to maybe send their workers to games or potentially use it to entertain clients. Whereas B2C, or business to consumer selling, is that sport organization selling directly to an individual or a family, for instance. So it's important when you're thinking about inventory or the various ticket packages that you align the potential menu of packages that you offer with the people that you're trying to sell to, right? And obviously, a business that's looking to purchase tickets for it, to entertain its clients is probably going to be looking for something very different than, say, a family of 3 that just wants to bring their son to the game occasionally. So keeping that in mind. Also keeping in mind that there are essentially 2 things that a sales rep should consider or understand about their buyer before thinking about the different packages they might offer. And one is their financial ability, right? Understanding what it is they can actually afford to purchase. And we'll talk more about that later in the semester as well. But I think it's an important thing to note, right? That you don't want to oversell buyers, because then they're not going to come back, right? If they can't truly afford to buy what you're selling them, they're not going to come back the next year. So understanding financial ability and what's realistic for a potential buyer. And then understanding their desire to attend games. What type of fan are they? How often are they actually able to attend games given their work and family schedule? These 2 things or kind of concepts are really important to understand about a buyer before you actually lay out potential ticket packages. Now, historically, the goal of a salesperson has been to move buyers up the frequency escalator. And if you've taken a marketing class before, you've heard of this concept of frequency escalator. Excuse me. And you've probably seen this visual, right? So this idea of the frequency escalator is, non-consumers or people that are uninterested in your product are kind of here at the ground level, right? Get people interested in your product through the media. They become indirect consumers. You get them to start sampling your product and purchasing it a handful of times. They become light users. They continue to move up the escalator the more often they purchase your product. And as you can see, they become heavy users, and then ultimately the goal is, they become medium users, and then ultimately the goal is for them to become heavy users. So this concept of the frequency escalator has been applied to the selling of sport ticket inventory for a long time now. With the goals being, number one, we want to get new buyers on the escalator, right? And once they're on the escalator, the whole idea is forward progression, right? Want them to continue to move up that escalator by purchasing more and more tickets each year. And ultimately, because it's an escalator, you want to keep people or potential buyers from either going down the escalator or falling off the escalator, right? You want to continue moving them up and forward progressing on that escalator. So we'll talk a little bit now about some of the different ticket packages offered based on where someone might fall on that frequency escalator. But we're also going to later kind of consider or reimagine the idea of this frequency escalator for today's environment. Okay, so again, I want us to identify the common ticket packages or inventory sports teams offer buyers based on where they fall on that escalator. So traditionally, those people that fall into the category of non-users or light users tend to be offered products like group tickets or single game tickets, right? These are people that are not attending many games, but might be kind of sampling the product. Group tickets is obviously a way for sports teams to bring in large groups of fans for a discounted price. Generally, there's some kind of minimum purchase that they have to make in terms of numbers. And oftentimes group tickets are this focused effort, right, where group sales reps might seek out specific groups that already exist in the community. So maybe sorority group, fraternity group, maybe Boy Scouts, go on and on. You can identify different groups that already exist in the community, and those groups tend to be, targeted through a focused effort. So group ticket buyers we would probably consider light users or, in some cases non-users. These are probably people that are attending a single game and in many cases never intending to return, right? Often they're going because they're a part of this group. Single game ticket buyers also fall in this category of sort of non-users to light users. Single game tickets are not a piece of inventory that professional sales offices tend to try to sell. Typically, single game tickets are only geared towards the box office, meaning if you want to buy a single game ticket, you have to create that sale yourself, right? You have to call it the box office, you have to show up there. There isn't going to be a sales rep calling you to try to sell you a single game ticket, right? Because it's just not worth the department's efforts, time, resources. But with that said, even though single game ticket purchasers tend to be on the lower end of the escalator, once you start to see a pattern, so maybe a single game buyer has bought 2 or 3 games in a row or in a few months period, then they become a warm lead, right? And potentially the same could be said for group ticket purchasers if they return after their group night. Even though these folks are sort of on that light user side of the escalator, them coming and then maybe coming again to a game shows that there's an interest there and a potential for them to move up the frequency escalator. All right, so we talked about light users. Now we're moving up the escalator to that medium or heavy user, so it's more towards the top of the escalator now. So medium users, in terms of ticket inventory, you tend to see things like partial plans delivered to them. So, it could be a 5-game pack, could be a 10-game pack, depending on the length of the season. These could be either pre-selected games by the team that they're selling because they know they might be low-interest games, or they can be customized packages. So, the person purchasing the plan can choose or select the games they want to attend. So partial plans tend to fall in that medium user piece of the escalator. And then obviously the heavy users, kind of what all ticket sales reps are aiming for, is that season ticket holder plan. So getting someone to purchase a season ticket plan is sort of the ultimate sale if you are a ticket rep. And you might be thinking, what is the incentive for someone to purchase a full season ticket plan in today's market? And there still are incentives to doing so, despite the fact that there are more and more ways to purchase tickets now than there have been in the past. Typically season ticket packages are discounted, right? So there is a financial incentive there, meaning that if someone purchases all the games for a season, they're getting that at a discounted rate versus if they were to purchase individual tickets instead. There also tends to be this exclusivity with being a season ticket holder. Obviously, it depends on the team. But typically, if you're a season ticket holder, you get to select where your seats are, right? You tend to have first grabs at some of the more premier seating, the better views in the stadium or arena. And there tend to be additional perks with being a season ticket holder, right? So whether it's getting an autographed jersey or some kind of other merchandise, there also can be, supplemental events that you get access to that other fans do not. I know when I worked for the Blues, this was a huge component of how we kept our season ticket holders, was creating these opportunities for our season ticket holders to interact with our players, right? So whether it was for, a preseason party that they had at the beginning of the year, or a postseason event, casino night, whatever it might be, a chance to kind of engage with our players and do things that other fans weren't getting access to. That was a huge component or driver for people purchasing season tickets. One last package to mention here, or piece of inventory that tends to fall on the medium to heavy user side of the Escalator, is premium seating. So these tend to be, your club seats that are, in terms of, comfort, a little bit better, maybe offer unlimited food and beverage wait service to those seats. Obviously, luxury suites would also fall into this premium seating category. Oftentimes the target for the premium seating is the business to business sales, right? So the businesses that are looking to entertain clients might tend to be the target audience for luxury suites, although there are individuals that purchase premium seating as well. But we would kind of throw the premium seating inventory on the medium to heavy user side as well, just based on the cost, right? Obviously it's premium seating, so there is a higher cost to that inventory. Okay. Sorry, I had to drink some water. So here's our frequency escalator. We already looked at it and sort of assessed it before, but now you can see I've added in the different types of inventory here, right? So you can see kind of visually where people might fall on this escalator based on the inventory they're purchasing from a sport organization. Okay, so I've spent all this time telling you about the frequency escalator, really only to tell you that I think things are changing. And I think a lot of sport organizations are starting to reimagine this concept of the frequency escalator when it comes to getting people to purchase tickets. And Bill Sutton, who is kind of one of the original sport management scholars in our field, wrote a great article about this concept in Sports Business Journal a few years back, and I've included it in your readings for the module this week because I just think it's really important. And I think he makes a lot of really good points about how the concept of the escalator, while it's worked for decades, might be becoming outdated based on the types of people that sport organizations are now selling tickets to, right? So the kind of aging baby boomer at some point is no longer going to be the target audience for these teams. So they have to reimagine what it looks like to sell them tickets. And, Bill makes a great point here. He says the elevator permits the person riding to not only ascend to higher levels, but also to descend to a lower level or simply stop and get off in an area of interest to them. And I think you can all probably relate to this a little bit, that the idea of sort of becoming a lifelong season ticket holder is probably not something you envision for yourself. It's certainly not something I envisioned for myself. I like the idea of the elevator, right? That provides more flexibility for the buyer. It allows them to, when they want to purchase products from the team, they can, and when they don't, they can get off, right? And I think whether it's millennials or Gen Y, we're starting to see a shift in the way that these consumers interact with organizations, and it's no different for sports teams either. So I want you to read that article from Bill because I think it's really thought-provoking when it comes to thinking about sort of the type of inventory we're selling and who we're selling it to. And this is just an image from the article, but definitely take a look. And I think it's interesting to think about how this entire approach to how we sell tickets and how we package plans might be changing before our eyes. Okay, I just want to end by talking about some more recent trends in ticketing strategies. Sorry, let me pull this up here. There we go. So some of these are really recent. Some of these have been kind of trends for the past 5 to 10 years, but I think they're all important and also sort of point to where we might be heading and in some ways echo what I was just saying about the shift to an elevator versus an escalator. So I'll just highlight what these trends are, and then I'll show you some examples of each. So variable ticket pricing, you probably heard about. This is pricing structures where the prices vary based on anticipated demand. And really the idea is, all games are not the same, right? And that's something that probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, teams started to identify, right? Especially for sports that offer a ton of games in their schedule, like baseball, realizing that, hey, the Cubs, when they play, a weekend series at home with the Cardinals, there's a higher level of demand for those games than, say, an interleague game from another team or against another team. So the same is true for weekend versus weekday games. And there are a whole lot of other factors that go into variable ticket pricing, but the idea is basically that we can make more informed decisions about our ticket pricing based on our anticipated demand. So I would say today in the marketplace, you'd be hard-pressed to find a sports team that does not have some kind of variable ticket pricing model at the beginning of the season, right? So they've set up or established games and categorized them based on what they anticipate to be the demand, right? So those marquee games are going to be priced higher than, say, their bronze games. So variable ticket pricing is a way for teams to kind of take advantage of those games that are going to have a higher demand, but still get people in the seats for those lower demand games. Okay. Another trend here that's sort of an extension of variable ticket pricing is dynamic ticket pricing. So here organizations have the ability to change prices on a daily basis or even more frequently as demand changes. So very similar concept to variable ticket pricing, except with variable ticket pricing, the pricing is set before the season starts and it doesn't change throughout the season, right? With dynamic ticket pricing, teams have the ability to change prices in real time, right? So if COVID wasn't happening and say I was looking to go attend a baseball game this weekend, I might look in the morning online and it might have one price point, and then later in the day, a storm is coming through town. I go back and the price has dropped, right? Because the weather has changed. So teams now have the ability to manage prices in real time. And you can think about how efficient that is in terms of pricing, right? It allows them to take advantage of those days when demand is really low, but still get people in the building. It also allows them to take advantage of maybe a winning streak that the team is on. So dynamic ticket pricing is pretty common now as well. Membership clubs. So the NBA in particular has been really big on this trend in membership clubs. So instead of marketing season ticket holder plans as the traditional season ticket holder plan that you sign up for as an individual, they've been going this route of membership clubs. So basically, instead of signing up as a season ticket holder, you sign up to join this kind of exclusive club. And part of that membership includes tickets to games, but it also includes a number of other features, right? So I mentioned the NBA. The Cavaliers were one that were pretty early on this. They call it their Wine and Gold Club, Wine and Gold United is what they call it. And you can see they have 3 different types of memberships allowed. And again, it includes tickets to their games, but it also includes this entire suite of ancillary perks. So the idea here with the membership clubs is to kind of create this community, right? So that not only can people be tied in with the team, but they can also be a part of this special club and they can get to know other members of that club. So the NBA has been really successful with this. In terms of widespread use across sports, it'll be interesting to see if other leagues look to this model as well. Okay, last one here is subscription-based pricing. This one is probably the most recent trend in ticketing, and one that's really kind of playing out in real time as we speak. The idea here is that fans pay a fixed monthly fee for typically discounted general admission tickets or for a fixed number of games at a deep discount. So some of you might have seen this. A number of sports teams are now offering a subscription-based plan, basically in addition to what they already offer for season ticket plans. And the idea here is that someone could pay a monthly fee, just like you would for your subscription to Netflix or Spotify. And instead of getting, unlimited access to TV shows or songs, you're getting unlimited access to a sports team's games, right? Now, keep in mind, generally these tickets are not good seats, right? They're kind of whatever is left over. In some cases, teams are just using general admission tickets. And the price point tends to be low, right? So it's essentially for people that just want to be at the game. They don't necessarily care about where they're sitting. And they want to be able to make the decision as to whether they attend kind of at the last minute, right? So those tickets are available if they want them, but they don't necessarily have to use them. A lot of different leagues have been trying this out over the past few years. The Braves were one of the first professional teams to do it. They're still doing it, so it's been pretty successful for them in reaching new demographic of fans. So young people like 18 to 34 has been a really big market for this type of ticket pricing. A few NFL teams have also used it, so it is possible to apply this concept not just to a long season, but even a shorter one as well. We're also seeing a number of colleges try this out as well. Oregon State is one that's been testing it. So I think it's probably going to continue to grow in terms of popularity. And I think it really does kind of go back to what Bill Sutton was saying about reimagining the frequency escalator, and that people want flexibility, right? And they want to be able to make decisions about attending games at the last minute. They want to be able to determine the price point and kind of where they sit. So this is a good example of that kind of playing out in real time. Okay. So I know we covered a lot today in terms of pricing strategy and also looking at the different types of inventory that sport organizations use. Hopefully you feel like you have a good grasp on that for now. Again, I think it's important because once we get to, actually looking at the selling process and applying the selling process, it's going to be important that you all have this good foundational understanding of pricing theory and strategy, as well as common inventory that sport organizations are working with. So, all right, that's all I have for this week. Have a good rest of your week. Thanks.